This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hello and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Tyder and my guest today is Helen King. Helen is from Auckland, New Zealand. She is a former journalist and reporter who turned a podcaster. Her podcast is called The C Word. Kiwis Talk About Cancer. Hello and welcome, Helen.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I am super excited you are here. And, I was just saying Kiwis, and I'm like, we have listeners from 70 countries here. I wonder how many of them know who Kiwis are. Who are Kiwis?
New Zealanders, when I'm not a small fuzzy fruit.
How did that happen?
Yeah, so we have a small flightless bird called a kiwi. And it is small and kind of brown. And I don't know whether that's why they called a kiwi fruit, but that's, we call ourselves kiwis after a small flightless bird.
That's cute. I never knew that. I knew about the bird, but I always, when I heard kiwis about New Zealanders, I always thought of kiwi, the fruit. So now I've learned something. Okay, so you guys are little birds, not fruits. Helen, tell me about your podcast. I was very, very excited to be your guest this week or last week, I forgot, and talk about my family's many, many battles with cancer and what I've learned from it. How did you start doing it? And what is it about?
It was so cool to have you as a guest, and I really enjoyed talking to you. And I always feel I feel such a privilege to talk to people about their experiences. And then at the same time, I hate that we've come together because of cancer, because it's just such a awful disease. I had breast cancer in 2018 when I was 37, and it was a huge event in my life, and I really struggled afterwards. I had 18 months of treatment, and I struggled a lot to get my life back together and to find stories that I connected with. And I think because I have that background in journalism, I'm someone who likes to tell stories and to create things. And I just had this little idea bubbling away that I wanted to provide a platform where people could talk authentically and openly about what cancer was really like. So last year during lockdown, like so many other people, I decided, hey, why not, start seeing whether I can, make this podcast. And that's kind of where it started.
It helped us tremendously. I think me more than Nick when he went through his cancer, both his cancer diagnoses. I remember his doctor said he has a patient who's same age like him and same diagnosis and everything else. And he was glad to put us in touch with him and his wife. And I remember speaking to them, and that helped me really tremendously. It helps me to see that I'm in a shared situation, that I'm not the only one. I'm not sure if Nick is the same way like me, but this is why I think it's super exciting and interesting what you are doing, just to show people. For me, it's easier. It's like this shit happens to everyone, like we're together in this. We're together in this. Let's get out of it together. So I think it's awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for including the caregivers. I don't know if I in this situation, I was a caregiver, but many people forget or don't even understand how harsh it is for the people who accompany cancer patients. And I talked about it a lot, both with my father and Nick, and they both said yes, because when it happens to you, you kind of have control, or you have more of a feeling you have control over what's going on, whereas when you are just a supporting person, then you're totally floating in the air, supporting this situation that's not directly about you, and where you don't really make any decisions. And it's very, very harsh on the supporters. So thank you for including us in your podcast as well.
No, it's not a problem.
So I learned from you when we spoke that your mom had a breast cancer diagnosis many, many years before you. And then you had to face it. I was wondering if there was any lesson for you in having experienced it with your mom first, or seeing how she coped with it.
Yeah, it was like, so Mum had uterine cancer.
Oh, uterine. Okay. Sorry, yeah. I mixed it up.
That's okay. And that was, I think it was about 12 to 13 years ago. And I think in a way it did, because Mum really just got on with it. And I know it is a terrible Kiwi trait, I think, in some ways, or just get on with things. and she...
Is it like British a little bit? Just keep calm and carry on, or do you not keep calm? Do you just carry on?
we just keep going. It's the stiff upper lip. And so I guess in some ways it did, because she just trusted what her doctors were saying and went on with things. And I think the main thing that it really taught me was not to wait with symptoms. So as soon as she started having postmenopausal bleeding, she went and saw her doctor. And that, really kick-started the diagnosis. And so for me, I don't wait. If I've got something wrong with me, I will go and see the doctor, which, for me, I think really saved my life.
Oh, wow. That's what I do as well. It's interesting. We didn't talk about this before, but maybe this is what you learn through all of this. Me too. I'm the moment I notice something, I'm like, no, I'll have this checked. I'm not waiting for anything. Thank you very much. Yeah. Was she supportive did she help you while you went through your battle?
Yes, absolutely. So Mum and Dad came to, they were there when my GP, which is your sort of everyday doctor, because I got the phone call after I'd had my mammogram. So I had an ultrasound and then a mammogram, and then I got a phone call from the doctor saying, you need to come in today and you need to bring us.
I hate that.
And
Yeah.
And so Mum and Dad, I said, look, this has happened, because they, Mum took me to my mammogram, and they came to that diagnosis, basically where the doctor said, look, it looks very much like cancer. And then she was basically, they were there for the initial consultations and biopsies with the breast surgeon, and then she took me to chemotherapy every time. So, very much there are different steps of the way. Yeah.
Beautiful. Did you did not need a mastectomy?
Yeah, so I had a full mastectomy, so my right breast was removed, and then I had what they call a sentinel node clearance. So I think I had about 24 lymph nodes removed from under my arm.
Oh, wow.
So it was big.
It's big. But hey, you're well now. Yeah, I think we already started talking about Mama Jane. So let's talk about Mama Jane. You said that the relationship wasn't always very straightforward, which many of mother and daughter relationships are not. But we even learned from those. And that you were attached as a baby, but then things started changing. And tell me about a relationship with a mom that's not very straightforward.
So I was very attached to my mum when I was little. I don't remember doing this, but I'm the youngest of three girls, and apparently I used to sort of latch on to Mum and look at my sisters and say, my mummy.
Oh my God, that's cute.
My mummy, just like a youngest child would,
Yeah.
And so, I guess, I was very attached in that way. And then I think I think as you grow up and as you hit puberty, I think, teenage girls are quite revolting. We turn into absolute toe rags at times. And I think, my teenage years were really challenging. And so I guess, parents who have 3 teenage daughters, I think it's always going to be fraught, no matter how strong the family relationship is. It's always going to be a bit fraught with that many, females in the house.
Wow, it must be difficult. Where is Mama Jane from, and what's her story?
So my mum was born in a town called Gisborne, and that is on the east coast of the North Island here in New Zealand. It's a beautiful area, beautiful beaches and countryside. It's a small town, even by, I guess, New Zealand standards.
Helen, here's an embarrassing thing. I don't know how many inhabitants New Zealand has. What's the population of New Zealand?
I think we're about 4 million.
Okay. So that's like Croatia.
No, yeah. We're not. We're 5 million. Okay. No, we're about 5 million.
Okay, you're bigger than Croatia.
Okay. And so she grew up down, in Gisborne. Her father was a vet. And so family ran a vet business there, and she had 2 older brothers. And then Mum went on to become a teacher. She met my dad at university. They got married on campus.
Oh, that's cute.
So that Mum and Dad were both biology teachers. They both taught, for their entire careers. I think they both taught for about 30 or 40 years. And so that was, I guess that's Mum in a very brief synopsis of my mum, 74 years on this earth.
And they had 3 daughters, and they're still married, as we hear.
Yeah. So we're a family of 5. I've got 2 older sisters. Mum had them in fairly quick succession because there's only about 18 months between each of us, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she would have had 3 children under the age of 4.
Oh, wow.
When I was born. Yeah.
Wow. But then I'm thinking, then you're done. I think it's not a bad strategy. It's hard while the kids are little, but then you've dealt with little kids at one point, and then it's done. It's not like over and over again. I don't know. Who am I to say? I only have one. And now I'm ready for a hamster. So let's talk about what have you learned from her?
I was thinking about this because I think that we often take for granted where we learn things or who shapes us.
Yeah, we do. And we don't think about it until somebody asks you, like, what did you learn from your parents? You really don't think about it. This is why I started this podcast, because I find it fascinating and important and great to think about it while they're still alive. You can go and ask her, Mom, what do you think I learned from you?
Absolutely. Oh, that would be hilarious.
Some guests do that. I had a few guests who are like, okay, so I spoke to my mom about this.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I interrupted you again. So
I find it's hilarious because I think about, and I think this story is quite typical of my mum, where I once asked her, because I've been the 3rd child, well, what was it like, giving birth? And she was like, oh, well, once you get to the 3rd one, you just get down to it and it happens. It's just, that was the explanation. So I think with Mum, when I think about what she's taught me, one of the things comes to mind would be, simple lessons like baking. Mum taught me how to bake. And I can remember the first thing I baked was a tray of vanilla cookies. And once I learned that, I've kept that lesson, and it's really something that I know that I learned from my mum. Strangely, never taught me how to cook.
That's super interesting. Did she cook?
Yes, yes. So
But
mum,
oh wow.
yeah,
But then she's like,
yeah.
I'm just closing the door to the kitchen. I don't want to see you. I have a friend who has 3 kids, and she's like, actually, I started liking cooking because that's the type for myself. I just close the door and I'm like, no, I'm cooking now.
Yeah.
This is why you
Yeah.
didn't learn how to cook. But how does this baking, does it serve you? Does it mean a lot to you? Do you still bake? Is it comforting?
Yeah. I think it is a comfort thing, and it's a nurturing thing of baking for other people. I think because both my sisters bake and cook. They both can bake and cook well, and I get by. I did learn to cook eventually through trial and error when I moved out of home. But it definitely does have those sort of comforting links of just being in the kitchen and that smell of baking. Because, Mum was the sort of mother. I mean, I guess she's a baby boomer, and a lot of mum and dad's roles were very gender, assigned.
Mm-hmm.
And so we always had home baking, and I didn't realise that other kids didn't, because it was sort of a given in our house that there was always baking, and the biscuit tins, and biscuits are cookies, we call, just in case you're thinking,
yeah,
we're putting John's in a tin, but but yeah, so that was something that she really taught me, was that just of baking is a nurturing thing, and I guess as a pleasurable activity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I love it how it fills up the house with nice smells. It creates an atmosphere in the house when you bake. Then you mentioned something, I love this, about being inquisitive.
Yes, very much so. Now, it's so funny now. I just think about these things that I think are quite, specific to our family, or other families might do it. But mum and dad both being teachers, I guess there's always a thirst for knowledge, of finding things out. And so it was things like, we always had encyclopedias, mm-hmm. and we always had like an atlas that, I loved looking at the atlas and looking at where things are and where a town, all over the world. And I think that mum and dad do this too. And I didn't realise that this is probably where I picked it up, where if you don't know something, you Google it. Or they're constantly reading the newspaper and reading things out loud and commenting on things. And I think that's where I learned it too, where this constant need to know about things and to not just take things on face value, and to kind of investigate, mm-hmm. want to keep understanding and learning things. Yeah.
But how interesting that you became a journalist then.
Yes. Yeah.
It's interesting, huh? That you turned it into your profession in a way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I joke because I say I'm quite a nosy person. I like to know what's going on, which is so like my dad. Oh my gosh, so like dad.
Did they teach you about their profession? Because I remember my grandmother being a biologist. It was beautiful, for instance, walking through the woods with her. She would be like, oh, and this is this, and this flower is that, and this insect is this, and that. That was very, very exciting.
We did, and it's so funny because when you're a kid, you just think, oh,
yeah. Oh, shut up.
I don't care. But then as an adult, I find it so fascinating that mum and dad know all these things, that you can say to them, what's that plant? Oh, it's this. And I think, I don't think I'll be like that as a parent, because I feel like, I don't know. We can Google it though.
Oh, wow. We have so many awesome lessons. I'm looking at your list and I'm like, oh, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the next one. Knowing where you're coming from.
Yeah, this I think is quite an interesting one with my parents, because mum is very into her genealogy and has spent a lot of time, on ancestry.com and looking at things and connecting with people and, sort of building up family trees. And she has, old diaries from, generations back of people. And, she can, if you say to her, oh, well, where did the great-grandparent live or great-great-grandparent, she has tracked all of that back. And so I find that quite interesting because, New Zealand is a colonized country, and I think it's important to sort of acknowledge that, but to also know where your family had come from before they came to New Zealand. And mine's very boring. It's just Scotland and England.
But that's very interesting. You never think about that. Yeah, finding these roots because you are, you are uprooted in a way. Did you guys do the DNA?
I think she's done something. I don't know if it's the one that. Yeah, I would love to do it. I think it's fascinating. I'm not sure which one she's done. I will have to ask her. But, at home she has, it's this big book that, part of her family, I think on her maternal side, someone who, I think it must be a family trait of genealogy and ancestry.
It's in the family. Family's in the family.
Yeah, because it's just this big book of this is this person and they had these children, and just lists who does what, and it's quite fascinating. And I am in there. It's really interesting, I think, to look at something like that and think, wow, I am actually connected to something quite big.
That's beautiful. It gives you a feeling of belonging.
Yeah.
I like this one. We have manners. I love this. I just interviewed a lady from Iran, and Iranians have this old tradition of manners, and these manners are extremely, extremely complicated. There's like a whole set of very difficult and interconnected manners and politenesses and behaviors and how you answer when somebody offers you a cake at home, but you know what I liked about what she explained to me? She said it's a finesse, not only in behavior, but also how you treat the world around you. And just the interaction, this finesse and feeling for interaction with the world and respect towards the world around you. I thought that was very beautiful how she gave these manners a bigger context and a bigger meaning.
Yeah, and I think it kind of connects in with a couple of things. And I didn't put this one down, but I think about how this has impacted us is that, and I think it goes back to the, being inquisitive, is that we always had a lot of books. We just had bookshelves and we were always read to and things. And this, it does relate. So the manners thing, I think, is that we're always, taught to say thank you and those sorts of things and how to act towards other people. And, I think just to treat people with respect. And then I think about the books that I remember as a child. Nobody else remembers them. So we seem to have just this weird array of books Mum must have got from a teacher's resource centre or something. But they were all about things like I remember one of them was the Alex series, where Alex was a little boy who was being raised by a single mother, and his best friend was a little African-American boy. And, and we had and books about a black and white bunny being, and so I think Mum and Dad really influenced that thing of there are different things in this world and that's good and to be celebrated. And, and I think that sort of all ties into having manners and knowing how to act in certain situations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to teach Kai that manners matter because when you treat other people well, they treat you well. I'm trying to teach him that if you're polite and respectful, this is what you're going to get back.
Yeah.
Do we have another lesson, or do we want to do the trick question of what do you wish she taught you?
We can do the trick questions. I think there probably are lots of lessons, but I think one of the things I really do wish I had been taught was how to have self-esteem, or how to have more confidence in myself. And I think, because it's funny with the manners, because I'm really, I believe that, you need to teach your children, and we need to be taught how to act respectfully and things like that. But I also think that for women, it's important to be taught as a child that you don't have to accept everything, and that actually you can be assertive and you can say no to things, and that you are perfect just the way you are. And I don't feel like I was taught those things. I feel like I sort of learned those lessons when I was a lot older. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it is the fault of anyone, because I think about Mum, and she's a baby boomer. She grew up in the 50s and 60s.
Different generation, yeah.
It's a different generation, and people have had different experiences and things, and so I don't sort of place the fault anywhere. I just think
just something
different generation. Yeah.
But Helen, when I read this, I was wondering, how do you teach this to children? Do you think it's something we have to model for them, or do we tell them, or both?
I think it's a bit of both, and I think mothers of boys and girls need to teach it, because I think it was really different for me, because I have ADHD and I wasn't diagnosed until last year, and so I was about 6 months before I turned 40 where I found out that, wow, my brain is different. And that was something I'd known my whole life. It was like, why am I so different? Why don't I fit in? And I think that if I had children, and I try and do this with my niece and nephew, that I, constantly say to them, you are perfect the way you are. There is nothing wrong with you. Yeah. There is, it's okay to be like that, to be exactly who you are, because I think that we get so many messages through our life, especially when you're a neurodivergent child, especially one that hasn't been diagnosed yet, that there is something wrong with you and that you do not fit.
That's a big one. You're perfect the way you are. I'm having a picture of these white and black bunnies right now in front of my eyes, and I'm like, you're perfect no matter what kind of a bunny you are. You're just perfect.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Oh, it's so funny. I just laughed so much at the books that we had, because no one else had them. So if I say, do you remember those books when we were a kid, the little Roy and Alex, the little friends, the white boy and the black boy? No.
It's changing. Now everybody's reading Alex. Thankfully.
Yeah.
Helen, thank you so much for your lessons. Let's recap. So we learned from Mama Jane the comfort of baking. We learned about being inquisitive and not taking things for granted and finding things out for yourself. The beauty of knowing where you come from and who your ancestors are, and this feeling of roots and connectedness to something bigger than yourself. The manners, which we discussed, treating others with respect, and that influencing the way you are being treated. And then as a thing you wish she taught you is the self-esteem, self-respect, that you are perfect the way you are. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, gosh, my mind's gone blank. I think there are probably so many things. And I think that I think one of the biggest lessons as an adult in the relationship that we have with our parents when we are adults is that nobody is perfect, and that actually I think parents go into their parenting with everything that they have learned, whether it's functional or dysfunctional from their
Yes.
parents.
Yeah.
And everyone is just really trying the best they can to parent their children, with the knowledge they have. So yeah.
It's beautiful how often I hear from my guests that it helps tremendously when parents tell this to their kids. Women tell me, at one point my mom told me, look, I know I wasn't perfect and I know I did mistakes, but I want you to know that I just did the best I was able to. And obviously that means a lot to kids and later when they're grown-ups to hear that, to hear the parents say that. And they tell me suddenly everything opened up for me in my relationship with my parent. That's a very big one. Helen, thank you so much for being my guest. Thank you so much for spreading the word, the C word, and supporting. Congratulations to you being a warrior and a winner.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you and be part of your show. So thank you.
If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyoumama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Tider, that's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.